Margaret sacrifices her business and life to financially save her parents' home and support them for years. Her younger sister humiliates her publicly, and her parents stay silent. Margaret leaves, cuts off all financial support, and watches her family struggle and lose the house. She rebuilds her life, gains independence, and never goes back. Rain tapped the window like it had been waiting for me to finally break. The living room glowed soft and golden, the kind of warmth that should have felt like home. Mom's good china gleamed. Dad carved roast like he was cutting through decades of tradition. My rose petal cake sat in the center like a quiet love letter no one had opened. For once, I wanted to breathe. I wanted to watch my parents laugh over 40 years together and feel like a daughter, not a lifeline. Then Rebecca leaned back, wine glass dangling between her fingers. Her voice was casual, tossed like spare change. Honestly, Margaret, you're holding us back. We want to live without you. Her words hit with no dramatic thunderclap, no gasp. Just stillness. A slice of silence sharp enough to bleed on. Dad took a sip of wine. Mom blinked. No one moved. The room kept breathing even though I stopped. People always think betrayal roars. Sometimes it murmurs, polite and cruel in the same breath. I stared at her, this sister who once traced constellations on my arm when we were kids. The girl who used to ask me for help tying bows in her hair. Now she couldn't even look me in the eye. I felt heat climb up my throat, but my face didn't crack. I wasn't going to give them that moment. Not anymore. I raised my glass, tasting bitterness that wasn't wine. Cheers, I whispered, and that was the only funeral speech our relationship ever got. I didn't slam doors. I didn't cry in the hallway. I packed quietly, methodically. One suitcase. Laptop. A picture of me holding a bouquet in front of my flower shop, where I once belonged to myself. As I zipped the suitcase, I remembered my dad calling years ago, voice breaking as he told me they were drowning in debt. I remembered selling my shop, handing over 5 years of my life without hesitation. I remembered moving back home believing love meant staying. I walked through the kitchen where my mom used to hum while making breakfast. Past the dining room where strangers ate roast in a house I paid for. Past my sister, who didn't look up. I walked out the back door into the quiet Texas night, suitcase rolling behind me like a body I finally put down. No one followed. No one said my name. Funny how a house can swallow you whole and still say it never needed you. By the time I reached the motel, I wasn't Margaret the caregiver anymore. I wasn't the daughter who fixed everything. I wasn't the sister who stayed. I stared at my reflection in the motel mirror. Eyes tired. Heart cracked. But breathing. I don't belong to them anymore, I whispered. Not a threat. A fact. And for the first time in years, the air tasted like mine. Morning came with silence instead of footsteps outside my bedroom door. No kettle whistling. No requests for help. Just the motel air conditioner humming like freedom. Notifications burned on my phone. Mom. Dad. Rebecca. Their names vibrated against the nightstand, tiny fists pounding a door I wasn't opening. I left the phone where it lay and stared at the ceiling. Guilt tugged, soft but sharp. That's the thing about caretakers. Even abandoned, they check the wounds of others before touching their own. 5 years ago, I had soil under my nails and peonies in my freezer. Brides trusted me with their joy. People knew me by name. My shop smelled like lavender and purpose. Then one phone call changed everything. We're losing the house. We need you. Of course I came. Of course I sold my dream for theirs. That's what love is, right? That's what good daughters do. They shrink so their family can stand taller. At least that's the lie we tell ourselves. I remembered late nights paying bills at the kitchen counter, hands trembling as numbers dwindled on my bank app. I remembered Rebecca breezing in with shopping bags and entitlement, tossing her hair like she was auditioning for a life she hadn't earned. You don't even belong here, she'd once said over a mug in the sink. And I had swallowed it. Every word. Every sigh. Every unspoken expectation. Until last night. A sharp knock on the motel door shook me out of memory. Housekeeping. I slipped into shoes, grabbed my bag, and left before they saw me still breathing through bruises no one could see. I drove aimlessly until I ended up at Town Lake, the water still low and golden under morning sun. A jogger passed. A family fed ducks. Life didn't pause just because mine cracked open. I sat on a bench and let tears gather but not fall. Pain wasn't weakness. Pain was proof I had loved deeply. Too deeply. My fingers hovered over my phone. Their messages blurred. Mom asking if I was safe. Dad silent. Rebecca's words sharp even through previews. Come home. Stop acting dramatic. You're embarrassing yourself. Amazing how people rewrote history when the person holding everything walked away. I locked my screen and whispered to the lake, I'm not coming back. Saying it hurt like truth usually does. That evening, I stood outside Thomas and Laura's house, the only people who ever saw me as more than a wallet or a safety net. When they pulled me inside, saw my tired eyes, my shaking breath, they didn't ask why I left. They asked, what do you need? I didn't know yet. But I knew what I no longer accepted, being disposable in the house I saved. The first night there, I slept without checking if someone needed me. Freedom didn't feel light yet. It felt raw, aching, unfinished. But it was mine. And for now, that was enough. Thomas slid a mug of coffee in front of me the next morning, no questions in his eyes, just quiet solidarity. You look like someone who hasn't tasted peace in years, he said. He wasn't wrong. We sat in silence, the kind that feels like a blanket instead of a cage. Laura hummed in the kitchen, making breakfast like she'd been waiting to nurture someone who knew how to feed everyone except herself. Then the idea came, not loud or angry, but still and steady like a tide turning. No more auto payments. No more quiet sacrifice. If they wanted life without me, they could have every inch of it. My hands didn't shake as I opened my bank app. Every bill attached to their address rested there like anchors disguised as love. Electric, water, insurance, internet. The quiet bleed of identity. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Each confirmation felt like loosening a knot around my throat. Thomas watched, chin resting on his hand. Feels different when you stop bleeding for people who don't notice the wound, huh? I nodded, breathing easier for the first time in years. Then the first fallout call came 3 days later. Rebecca's voice shot through the speaker like venom dipped in panic. Margaret, the internet's off. I have deadlines. Mom's freaking out. Turn it back on. Not a sorry. Not a shred of remorse. Just entitlement dressed as urgency. You told me you wanted to live without me, I said. This is what that looks like. You're being dramatic, she snapped. Just fix it. Fix. The word I lived and died by for 5 years. I didn't react. I didn't shake. I simply hung up. Mom called hours later, voice trembling. Sweetheart, please. We can't keep up. I closed my eyes. Pain is complicated when it wears your mother's voice. When you didn't defend me, you chose your comfort over me, I whispered. Now I'm choosing myself. That night I lay in the guest bed, staring at a ceiling not stained with expectation. Freedom still tasted like grief. But I didn't take it back. 2 weeks later, a voicemail arrived. Panic frayed my mother's words. We got a foreclosure notice. I breathed out. The hard kind. The kind that tastes like the truth you've avoided for years. Rock bottom isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's clarity. I didn't reply. Because sometimes the only way people learn the weight you carried is when you set it down. And I wasn't picking it back up. Not for guilt. Not for blood. Not anymore. The neighborhood gossip hit faster than overdue bills. Pride tanks quicker than bank accounts when whispers start circulating like wildfire. Diane texted. Then Ellen. Then someone I didn't even know from the old street group chat. Concern dressed like curiosity. Everyone loves a good downfall until they remember the person falling once paid their HOA donation drive. Mom showed up at Thomas's door one evening, clutching her purse like it was hope instead of habit. She looked smaller, like life had taken a bite out of her, and she hadn't grown back yet. Margaret, she whispered. We're losing the house. I didn't rush to hug her. Didn't crumble. I invited her in like she was a guest in a life she no longer owned. She sat at the edge of the couch, spine fragile. Your sister is trying. She's working nights. Your dad is taking extra repair jobs. We're doing everything we can. Everything except apologizing when it mattered. You didn't defend me, I said softly. Calm hurts more than rage ever will. Her eyes filled, but tears weren't receipts. Love isn't proof when it arrives after the damage lands. She didn't mean it, Mom said. She did, I replied. And you believed her. Silence stretched. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that forces truth out like air after a punch. You always were so sensitive, she murmured, tired. There it was. The wound dressed as personality flaw. I wasn't sensitive, I said. I was alone. She looked away. I thought family meant more to you than this. My laugh was soft. Almost tender. Family should mean more than using someone until they break. She left without hugging me. I didn't go after her. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, old memories flickering like film grain. Teaching Rebecca to braid her hair. Dad cheering at my flower shop opening. Mom watering roses while I paid for fertilizer she never asked if I could afford. Love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. And sometimes it becomes distance. 3 months later, the house sold. The lawn that once hosted birthday parties and sticky lemonade afternoons stood overgrown. The porch light I paid for flickered its last and died. A for sale sign leaned crooked in sun-bleached grass. Childhood memories don't rot. They evaporate. Diane's text arrived before I even parked. I'm so sorry. Saw the moving truck. Sorry carried the weight of gossip dressed as sympathy. I didn't reply. I didn't need to stand in the ruins to know how it felt. Some grief happens quietly inside ribs, not in front yards. Thomas looked at me over dinner that night. Feel anything? I considered. Pain, yes. Relief, deeply. Mostly, space. The kind you only earn after suffocating for years. A letter arrived a week later. Rebecca's handwriting. Neat. Careful. Hopeful. I'm sorry. I didn't understand. Rebuilding humility always arrives last. I folded it and put it away. Not to forget. But because closure doesn't need applause. I didn't reach back. I didn't untangle myself from the safety I had finally built. Sometimes forgiveness is letting someone stay outside your life without hating them. I chose peace over reunion. Pain over pretending. Self over obligation. My condo smelled like lilies again. Not out of necessity this time, but choice. The walls held frames of bouquets I'd created long before sacrifice became currency. Each petal was a reminder. I was more than the daughter who stayed. More than the sister who paid. I wasn't rebuilding. I was reclaiming. Workshops filled my weeks. Brides smiled again. I touched flowers instead of fears. I breathed without asking permission. One morning, as sunlight spilled across my kitchen, I thought of that night at the dinner table. Of the cake no one tasted. Of the silence that told me everything words never dared. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a quiet knowing. Some families call abandonment protection. Some call boundaries betrayal. But the truth lives somewhere in the middle. I saved them once. They saved themselves now. Or they didn't. It wasn't my weight anymore. I poured coffee, slow and steady. The kind of mundane peace that feels like a miracle when you've lived inside obligation. My phone buzzed with workshop registrations, friend messages, life moving. Not once did I check if my parents needed something. Not because I didn't care. Because I finally cared for me too. Out the window, someone walked their dog, wind rustling leaves like soft applause from the universe. I whispered, not to anyone, but to myself. I didn't lose a family. I returned to myself. Some houses collapse. Some hearts rebuild. Mine did both. If you're reading this and you've carried a life that was never shared, hear me, you are not selfish for putting it down. You are not cruel for stepping away. You are not broken for wanting more than obligation. You are allowed to choose peace over blood. You are allowed to live unneeded and still be loved. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes walking away is how you finally come home.